Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our launch event for Geography Education Online, or GEO, which is the GA's new, innovative and standalone website for GCSE and A-level students. My name is Becky Kitchen. I'm the CPD Curriculum and Marketing Manager at the GA, and I'm going to be leading you through this launch event. So I'm joined today by Alan Kinder, who's the Chief Executive of the GA. He's going to be giving us an overview of the project and describing the main features. And I'm also delighted to be joined by Simon Ward as well, who's the head of group in the East at the Field Studies Council. So he's going to be talking about part of the GEO offer. Just a quick note about questions. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions as we're going through, and we will have time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, do feel free to type those in the chat as we go. And we'll pick them up at the end once we've sort of outlined what GEO is all about. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Alan, who's going to give us a flavour and an overview of what GEO is.
Becky, thank you, and thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon. Just to say a few words then about GEO. In terms of an overview, GEO's aiming to do what it says on the tin, I suppose, to provide and support high quality geography education, but of course online. And as Becky has already mentioned, the idea is that we're going to be launching a bespoke, tailored website, which is aimed particularly at GCSE and A-level geography students. It's a dedicated website for that purpose. And its launch date, it's due for launch at the beginning of the autumn term 2020. What is it going to contain? What will it provide? You get an idea of some of the components here on the slide that you can see. So for example, there will be live lectures on a wide range of geography themes. Those will be led by academic experts in their particular fields, giving the latest thinking and understanding of geography. There will be live tutorials, and Simon will say more about those shortly. They will address a range of themes related to geography investigation, including but not limited to fieldwork investigation. And GEO will also carry searchable and downloadable content across a range of themes for GCSE and A-level. And the aim of that content really could be summed up by saying that it's aiming to prompt deeper understanding and also independent thinking for students as they prepare for examinations in 2021. And the website will also carry online quizzes, and they'll provide a means to test, but also to reinforce core knowledge. And throughout all those components of GEO, what we hope will be going on in the very best traditions of the GA, of course, is a degree of interaction so that students can ask questions during lectures, during tutorials. They can sort of compete with one another through their online quizzes and all those sorts of things that lead to good learning. So just briefly then, how did GEO come about? Well, the easy answer, the short answer is that it's been made possible through a grant from Innovate UK. Innovate UK are part of the UK Research and Innovation, and they are funding at present a wide range of ideas to help overcome the disruption which has been caused globally by COVID-19. From a GA perspective, we were acutely aware back in March and April that this pandemic looked very likely to cause significant disruption to education. And in particular, our minds were on GCSE and A-level students and their teachers in the run-up towards those exams in 2021. So for example, we were beginning to think about fieldwork and the ways in which that might need to change in the coming year. We were also thinking about the work of our branches, local GA branches up and down the country that normally support face-to-face academic lectures, and we were worrying that those would also be disrupted. So the idea of GEO was born really out of those sorts of interests and concerns. So back to the features of GEO, and just to sort of finish off really a few points from me. The overall idea is that GEO will complement the work of schools and teachers, not replace that work. So it's aiming to provide extra help and support, particularly around those needs that I've begun to hint towards for 2021, but also the things that we know from our research with exam boards and through talking to teachers, those areas that students find challenging year after year. So I've mentioned, for example, fieldwork. We can see in the coming year that a lot of fieldwork might need to be more local than it otherwise might have been or had planned to be. That might mean that a lot of fieldwork is taking place in urban areas for the first time. And it might mean that we need to think creatively, for example, about how we conduct robust investigation of physical processes, but in a local or urban setting, just to give an example. Other thoughts around GEO? Well, key aspects of geographical investigation I've mentioned. So, for example, selecting data and evaluating. We know that students find those sorts of things challenging. Guidance on wider reading, independent reading, and information literacy. These are common areas that are coming back from teachers and exam boards. And lastly, but certainly not least, we've been thinking, as I'm sure some of you have, about how the COVID pandemic itself is prompting us to think a little bit differently about the world around us. So, for example, at A-level, ideas around global governance, we might be thinking afresh about those as a result of the pandemic, or even those ideas around place and changing places. So new perspectives. And just to finish with, just to be absolutely sort of clear about it, GEO will be accessed. I won't go into great detail here, but essentially teachers will register their interest in GEO with the GA. And as a result of doing that, and so forth. So we're really working through you as we so often do. Registering and accessing GEO will be free. There will not be a charge for it. This is work that's being funded externally, and we're delighted to offer it to teachers and students and schools free of charge. So I hope that gives you a brief run through the feel and the composition of GEO and some of its aims. We're very excited about it, delighted people are joining us this afternoon. And for a bit more detail, we'll hand back to Becky and then on to Simon.
Lovely, thanks ever so much, Alan. I just want to spend a little bit of time unpicking those three strands that Alan mentioned. And to do this, I'm going to just show you what the draft website will look like. So you can see this is a draft, I must emphasise that. But you can see here the different elements of GEO that students will be able to access. So the first thing that they will be able to access is content. So there'll be content there for both GCSE and A-level students. And linked to that content, there will be quizzes. So students will be able to access quizzes to sort of check their understanding, and there will be that sort of high score, that competitive element as well. The sort of second and third strands are the live events. So there will be the online tutorials, which, as I said, Simon is going to be talking us through in a minute. And then we have the live lectures as well. So those three strands, everything will be able to be accessed through the website, the standalone website. And we're just going to unpick and talk through those three strands: the content, the online tutorials, and then the live online lectures. So I'm delighted to welcome today Simon Ward, who is from the FSC. And Simon's going to just talk through what the online tutorials are going to look like. So Simon, can you just give us a bit of a flavour of these online tutorials and what they'll look like and the sorts of things that students and their teachers can expect?
Thanks, Becky. Yes, so what we are looking at with the tutorials is really to have a set of resources that will run throughout the autumn term. And there are going to be around 10 of these for A-level students and around 4 for GCSE students. And as Alan mentioned before, that really they're focused around the inquiry and skills, and we'll use real-world examples and fieldwork to support that, but it's generally going to be areas which we can work with students in a lot of detail. So as we go through, in terms of looking at the format of those, that'll be on the next slide. then basically what we'll look at those sessions is they'll be around an hour in length. There'll be an introduction to the topic, and then an interactive session basically where the person leading the tutorial will work with students, and there'll be activities that they'll be taking part in during that session, and then hopefully a live question and answer session as part of that, and then really to point students in the direction of further support that they can get, and look in other areas with further reading, resources and support. With the A-levels, then I'll just wait for the next slide to come up. With the A-levels, we are looking at a variety of different topics, but it will go from developing that title, looking at methodology and designing that, embedding GIS into the inquiry, and look at quantitative and qualitative data skills, but then also looking at conclusions and also really reflecting on why the NEA really matters, not just as a piece of work in the A-level, but also why it really builds those skills up as a geographer. And then for the GCSE, I think it's really, again, looking at those skills and looking at graphical skills, and again, using real world examples to build into that session. The same for numerical and statistical skills, but also the maps and cartographic skills. So really building up a set of all these different things that the students will be able to really enhance as they go through their GCSE and their A-level. But the FSC is really pleased and really honoured to be supporting the GA with this amazing project, and we'll be looking forward to working with a large number of students and teachers as we go through this autumn. And we've seen the really big digital programs such as Fieldwork Live and all the other things that the GA have been doing throughout the COVID period, and I think this just really builds on that, and it's a fantastic opportunity. So
thanks so much, Simon. And I mean, it's worth sort of saying that, yeah, I mean, it's as you were sort of saying, we've got sort of 14 tutorials. They're likely to be throughout the autumn term, half obviously led by the FSC and half by the GA. Just asking you very quickly, can you just sort of articulate why the importance of focusing on fieldwork for the majority or at least a significant number of these tutorials?
I think that the real world, I mean, geography is a real world subject, and actually fieldwork skills often is where students can really apply the knowledge that they've got. So actually building up that and using those real world examples and fieldwork skills is really sort of a key part of geography. And actually then in using those and then working them through the different topic areas and through the inquiry actually will really strengthen understanding and benefit those students throughout this autumn term, and then obviously as a resource moving forward.
Brilliant. Well, thanks ever so much, Simon. That's been really useful to sort of outline those online tutorials and what they're going to be looking like, and starting to think about what they'll be covering. I'm now going to just talk through a little bit about the content, the written content. The idea of this, the content, was that we're not trying to be comprehensive. We don't have time to cover everything that students may need. So instead, we're focusing really on quality content that really engages students with that subject knowledge. And the themes that we've chosen to focus on are really looking at the core topics rather than optional ones. We also thought it was important to focus on topics that were common to all of the awarding organisations and all of the specifications. And then I think, as Alan said, it's those that students find particularly tricky and may need additional support. So the example that I'm going to give you and to show you now is looking at planning the NEA. If you have a look at the GA website, we actually do have another sample resource that's already on the website. So do have a look at that if you haven't looked at it already. But I'm just going to do a very quick sort of whistle-stop tour through the sorts of things that students can expect when they log on and get engaged with the content. So just going to the first slide, there'll be a title slide, and then as you can see here, the idea is that students can work with the content and work with the information relatively independently. So this slide provides just a little bit of support for students, how to get started, the sorts of materials they'll need, how the PowerPoint is designed to be used, just giving them that little bit of context. And then it starts to explain what the content will cover. And specifically, it gives those different aspects that it's going to be focusing on. So it's just making sure, again, that students are really clear about what the content contained within the resource will offer. So to give an example, what we've got here, I think, as I said a minute ago, it's really important that this content is accessible to students of all awarding organisations. So here we've got the key term changing places, but actually we've identified how that terminology is dealt with differently in different examples. So hopefully students will be able to sort of lock into the terminology that is being used by their awarding organisation, so that they are kind of more fluent with that vocabulary. So the next few slides just give a little bit of information about why changing places is important. So this content in its entirety is on looking at planning an NEA specifically for the changing places topic. However, having said that, quite a lot of the tips and ideas that you'll see on the following slides are useful for all independent investigations. So although it is focused on changing places, there's quite a lot of useful information that students can take and apply to other things as well. So just going through the slides there. So looking at, seem to have lost the PowerPoint. Okay, hopefully that will come up again in a second. But yeah, we've got lots of content which will be on these different themes. And what we've also tried to do throughout the presentation is to link, as Simon was saying, link out to other resources as well. So for example, you'll be linking out to other resources on the GA website, maybe some other sort of downloadable resources as well. And at the end of the resource, there is examples of external links that can provide further development and further focus. So hopefully we'll get that resource up again in a second. And if we do, I'll go back to that just to give you a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that we're going to be offering. So Simon's talked to us about the online tutorials. I've tried to give you a bit of a flavour about the content. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to revisit that in a second. The third strand are the live online lectures. And what we were trying to do here was to try and sort of recreate a branch feel, a sort of a GA branch online. So the idea here is that academics will be offering lectures which will support the key themes that we've sort of got in the content. So it will be reflected in the content, but they'll also hopefully be going a little bit beyond to provide that really rich and up-to-date exemplification that we see in our GA branch lectures. So at the moment, we're building a programme of these lecturers from across the UK. I think one of the things that was really useful is that actually we've been able to take advantage of people who otherwise would be quite physically inaccessible. So it's been quite good to approach people and from all around the country. And we've had lots of positive resources. So at the moment, we're finalising that programme. I'm not able to sort of publish it now. So we're hoping to sort of finalise that and to publish that in the next few weeks. But those will be live, online, sort of branch type lectures with academics, probably around an hour long, where students can learn from the academics, get new examples, and to really question as well, ask questions of those academics so that they can best support their work. We're back. So I'm just going to return now to the content. And I was just talking through the planning of the NEA and this resource that we have as an example. If we can just go through, we've talked about getting started, talked about planning what the content is going to be involved. got some key vocabulary there. Here we go. So the next few slides are going to talk about the investigation of changing places, why it's important, and I think that's quite an important aspect for students to really understand why investigating changing places is an important aspect. So here, what the resource is trying to do is to really hone in on 3 key processes that students will have met in their work on changing places. So gentrification, regeneration, rebranding. There's a quick just recap of what those 3 things mean. And then I think one of the things that this resource does incredibly well is help students to unpack that process. So to really start thinking about, in this case, what rebranding is. So really breaking it down into manageable chunks. The other thing that this resource does is it identifies those 14 concepts that run through the all of the A-level specifications. And so what it does is it sort of flags those up and then looks at some of those key concepts and what they mean. And then, having sort of explored both the concepts of changing places and the 14 concepts that underpin the A-level specifications, the resource shows students how they can really unpack those complex concepts so they can break it down into manageable chunks. So to give an example, that then starts to make allow students to really think about research questions that they might want to think about that are manageable. So here we've got the example of globalization and talking about globalization and how that place might be connected. And there's also this table here shows students how they can pose those suitable research questions and link them onto the concept so that they can actually create questions that are manageable and well structured. So, for example, here we have risk. How might independent businesses in Cardiff be threatened by competition from chain stores? Representation. How should Cardiff City Council manage the image of the city? And then mitigation and adaptation. How can the council and businesses mitigate the risk of COVID-19 in the haze by adapting the way businesses operate? So you can see there how those concepts have been unpacked and then linked to that changing places environment, so that students are producing really quite focused, manageable questions. I talked before about the links to the download. So there are various downloads throughout the resources. This download that's linked here shows the difference between aims, hypotheses, and questions. And then looking at the concepts here, you know, there's examples that link out to resources such as what Egan's wheel is. And then finally, once students have sort of thought about their question, some common pitfalls are highlighted. So things like really sort of focusing on questions that can be answered rather than those that cannot. And then also thinking about the scale of their research and the scope of their research and just trying to make it manageable. And then finally, we've got the links out to the 4 specifications and also the summary of the specs on the GA website. So hopefully that has given you a bit of a flavour as to the sorts of content that students can expect and teachers can expect on the website. And as I said, there'll be a range of content that's both A-level and GCSE focused that students will be able to access. Okay, so I think we've covered those 3 kind of key themes in detail: the online tutorials, the content, and the live lectures. We've got a little bit of time now for questions. So I'm just going to go and look in the chat to see what questions we have. Okay. So our first question is it accessible and free for ITE providers to share with secondary geography trainees? So yes, any teacher, including a trainee, all they have to do is simply register with the GA, and then they'll be able to access the GEO material and events for free. And we also hope teachers will want to access the materials too. So obviously it's student facing. but we would like teachers to have a look at the resources too. Okay, and our next question. Okay, so we've got, I'm wondering how it would be delivered in practice. So for example, if you have 1,000 sign-ups for what's typically a form of small group teaching. So I think really the themes of some of those sessions are going to be quite specific. And what we are expecting is students will be focused on their areas of interest to attend, but we're also exploring different ways of sort of continuing the conversation after live events, just as we do with GEO CPD for teachers. So students will be able to access, they'll be able to interact, they'll be able to ask questions during the live sessions, but there will be also that that sort of way of connecting and continuing that conversation. Okay, any other questions? As I said, if you want to put them in the chat, that would be fantastic. But whilst we're just waiting for some other questions to come in, if we just go to the last slide, you can see there, we'd really love you to keep in touch. So obviously the GEO website is the place to go for most of the information about GEO, for news and announcements. There is also the option on the news and announcement for GEO to sign up to be the first to know. So do click on that link and fill in your details, and we'll be in touch with information about GEO and the launch. As we said, we're hopeful that's going to be at the beginning of the autumn term in September. Also on Twitter at the GA, you can we'll be tweeting, and email as well if you want to get in contact, info@geography.org.uk. So I'm just going to see, oh yeah, we've got one other question. So this question asks about a forum approach for follow-up. I think at the moment we're exploring lots of different possibilities. Possibly, but we'll keep you posted on that. I can give you a little bit more detail on the content section. So as we were sort of saying, we're trying to focus on core topics rather than optional content, optional topics, and also trying to make sure that all students from all specifications can access them. So to give you an idea of the sorts of areas that we're going to be focusing on, at A level, that will be sort of water and carbon, likely to be landscape systems, global systems and global governance, and changing places. We'll also be focusing some resources on the independent investigation. That's content resources as well as a lot of the online tutorials, and also focusing on geographical skills, so things like information literacy, research skills, that sort of thing. We also are thinking about revision practices, study tips, that sort of thing, and engagement with geographical content. So that's at A level. And then at GCSE, we're likely to be focusing on, again, those core areas that are common to the exam boards. So thinking about the geography of the UK, processes and landscapes, weather and climate and hazards, global ecosystems and biodiversity, cities and urban society, and global economic development. And there will also be some work on geographical skills and exam support for the GCSE students as well. Okay, great. So the next question is, will the live sessions be timed during the school day, or is that not decided yet? Nothing is set in stone just yet, but I think probably they're going to be around 4 p.m. We will be sort of asking for feedback on teachers about that. The idea being that 4 p.m. it gives students and teachers the opportunity to actually watch it together after school, if that's the way they want to organise it, or for students to watch those live lectures at home. We will be recording them though, so students will get access to those recordings as well. So I think that answers the next question. So will there be a repeat option to allow us to fit in with the timetables? So yeah, we'll be having the live event, but we will be recording it as well, so that students can have access to that event after the session has actually gone out. Okay, just give people a moment for any other questions. As I said, do keep in touch, and if you do have any questions sort of as a follow-up to this, then do email us at info@geography.org.uk so that we can answer those questions. Okay. In which case, I think we've had all the questions for the minute. So all it leaves me to do is to say thank you ever so much, first of all, to Alan and to Simon for joining us to give us a bit of an in-depth idea of what GEO is looking like, and also for you for joining. We hope that you are able to access GEO and get your students involved, and we'd love to keep in touch. So thanks ever so much.